Yeah, hi Rick. Here's the guitar body with binding. I'm going to show you now how I did that. Okay, first I am taking the glue up out of the press. So everything is all glued together nice and tight. Moving things out of the way for the routing setup. Putting my binding router surface, putting in a flush trim bit so I can trim off the excess plate material. You'll see how I do that in a second here. And push the router up through the table there. Okay, making sure the bit is correct. Routing off the excess. This actually looks easy. It took me a while to get this right. So there it is, all trimmed, ready for the binding. So the first thing I have to do is sharpen up the bit. This thing has to be razor sharp, otherwise you'll get tear out. So I use a diamond file just to make sure my binding router bit is nice and sharp. Wipe the glue off, the oil, and put it in the border cable router. Here's my binding material. It's oversized, and I'll show you how I trim that. Here I am checking with a caliper. So I go out to the machine room, put a little, the bandsaw is turned off, by the way, and I am putting a jig in there so I can trim that, and you can see these clamps are clamping that jig to the table. Just making sure everything's right. And then here the saw is turned on, and now I'm slicing the binding so that it is the correct width. The thickness was fine. I didn't have to do anything with it. So I do a couple extra strips. And here are the strips, one for each side with the cutoffs. Sanding those sides so they're nice and smooth and even, because the binding follows the smoothness of the sides. And then I go back again, I didn't show it, but I go back again and route the binding ledge. And here I am measuring my high-tech method of measuring the center joint of that 66-inch piece of binding. And I find with this type of binding, I need to help it conform to the sharp contours of the horns and the cutaway. So I use a heat gun. You can't use too much, otherwise there's the ducko cement, and I'm applying that. And I was going to say you can't use too much heat or you'll ruin the binding. You'll just melt it. And you see I'm using actual binding, and that's where the word came from, using rope. And boy, I sure am making it look easy here in fast motion. But it takes a lot of strength, and you got to make sure everything is pushed into place correctly. So I'm almost done here, and I just wanted to show you this little bit of progress. So now I just put one more of these bandy clamps on there just for good measure, and then take a good hard look at it, make sure everything looks right, and I got one more side to do.